August 2005. Fortaleza, Brazil. A white van rolls down a quiet street. Two men inside wearing dirty work clothes, hands calloused from months of digging. They park outside a small house with a landscaping sign on the door. Just another crew finishing their shift. But 256 feet beneath their boots sits the Central Bank of Brazil. Inside the vault, 3.5 tons of cash waits in neat stacks. $70 million. For 3 months, Luis Fernando Ribeiro led a crew of 25 men digging an 80-meter tunnel. They bypassed every alarm by coming up through the floor. How did ordinary criminals empty one of South America's most secure vaults and vanish with the largest cash haul in Brazilian history? September 2004. São Paulo, Brazil. 6 months before the heist, a group of men gather in a dimly lit bar. They nurse drinks, speak in hushed voices, and study a map spread across the table. To anyone walking past, they look like buddies catching up. In reality, they are designing Brazil's greatest robbery. Luis Fernando Ribeiro, a 26-year-old with connections to Brazil's criminal underworld, leads the conversation. Some reports link him to the notorious Primeiro Comando de Capital crime syndicate. Others simply call him a drug dealer with big ambitions. Ribeiro understood something most thieves miss. Traditional bank robberies fail because of time. The moment an alarm sounds, you have maybe 3 minutes before police arrive. Every second inside equals another chance to get caught. But what happens when you remove time from the equation? Ribeiro traced his finger across the map, pointing to the Central Bank of Brazil's Fortaleza branch. Then he moved to a quiet residential street 2 blocks away called Rua 25 de Março. The distance between these points measured exactly 256 feet. An engineer at the table studied the geology. Fortaleza sits on sandy soil mixed with clay. Difficult terrain, but possible to tunnel through with the right tools and patience. They would need to dig 80 meters, staying roughly 4 meters below street level, working every night for 3 months, removing about 1 ton of dirt daily. A locksmith raised the obvious question: what about the vault door? 4 inches of reinforced steel, time locked, impossible to crack quickly. Ribeiro smiled. They would skip the door entirely. While the walls and door were fortified with steel, the floor was only concrete and rebar. They would drill upward from below, emerging inside the vault itself. The sensors pointed at doors and windows. The cameras watched hallways. The alarms triggered when someone broke through walls. But who expects intruders to rise up through solid ground? Within weeks, Ribeiro assembled his full crew. Between 25 and 40 people would eventually participate. Diggers, electricians, lookouts, money handlers. Each promised an equal share of whatever they stole. The math was simple. $70 million divided among the crew meant life-changing money for everyone. February 2005. Fortaleza. Ribeiro rented a modest property on Rua 25 de Março. 2 bedrooms, a garage, nothing remarkable. He told the landlord he was starting a landscaping business. 3 months' rent paid in cash. No further questions. The cover story came together piece by piece. A professional sign reading Grama Sintética, artificial grass in Portuguese. A white van parked outside with the company logo. Rakes, shovels, and synthetic turf filling the garage. Everything a real landscaping company would have. One crew member, using the alias Paulo Sergio, went further. He built relationships with every neighbor, handed out baseball caps with the company name at local nightclubs, made the business feel completely real. Meanwhile, inside the back bedroom, the crew pulled up floor tiles and started digging straight down. The soil proved harder than expected. Clay mixed with rock. Progress came painfully slow. The engineer adjusted tactics, bringing in pneumatic drills and organizing rotating shifts with up to 7 people working around the clock. By the end of week 1, they had carved a vertical shaft 10 feet deep, reinforced with wooden beams. Now came the truly difficult part: tunneling horizontally toward the bank. Using a compass and detailed maps, the engineer calculated the exact angle. Northeast, 256 feet, straight toward the vault. 2 men squeezed into the narrow passage at a time. 4-hour shifts in suffocating heat. 1 person dug while the other loaded dirt into buckets. The buckets passed backward through the shaft, up to the house, where another team loaded them into the van. Every night, the van dumped soil at construction sites and empty lots across Fortaleza. The tunnel became an engineering marvel. Approximately 900 wooden planks provided structural support. Electric lighting ran the entire length. A ventilation system using PVC pipes and small fans pushed fresh air through the passage. An intercom allowed communication between teams while avoiding traceable phones. The conditions remained brutal. The passage barely fit 1 person. Heat was punishing. Police later found empty energy drink cans, water bottles, and burn ointment, evidence of how hard these men pushed themselves. By late March, they had dug roughly 100 feet. Halfway there, April 2005, the tunnel stretched past 180 feet. Then the crew hit water. A pipe running beneath the street had begun leaking into their passage. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to turn hard-packed dirt into thick mud. Progress slowed to a crawl as workers struggled through the muck. The engineer made a critical decision. They would angle around the pipe rather than risk a full break that might flood the tunnel or alert utility workers above. The adjustment added distance but kept the operation safe. At 220 feet, they encountered something more dangerous. Electrical cables, underground power lines feeding the city grid. One wrong move here meant disaster. Cut an active wire and half of Fortaleza loses electricity. The power company investigates. They trace the outage and find the tunnel. Everything ends. The engineer studied each cable carefully, identifying which lines carried current and which could be safely moved. The crew carefully rerouted 2 cables, securing them against the tunnel walls with prayers that they would hold. They held. By late April, the passage was nearly complete. 250 feet of narrow tunnel, reinforced and lit, stretching from the innocent-looking landscaping shop toward one of Brazil's most secure financial institutions. Only 6 feet of earth and 4 feet of reinforced concrete separated them from the vault floor. The central bank's foundation was their final obstacle. Steel rebar embedded in thick concrete. They would need specialized equipment, diamond-tipped drill bits capable of cutting through such material. The crew acquired what they needed and waited for the right moment. Weekend nights offered the best cover. The bank closed. Security became minimal. Ambient city noise from bars and nightclubs masked the sound of drilling. August 6, 2005, Saturday, 11 p.m. 3 months of preparation had led to this moment. The team assembled in the house for final preparations. 4 men entered the tunnel carrying drills, lights, and equipment. 250 feet of cramped passage lay ahead. At the end, earth met concrete. The engineer marked the spot precisely. This was where they would breach the vault floor. He activated the drill. Noise echoed through the confined space like underground thunder. 30 minutes of drilling. Then silence. Listening. Waiting. No alarms and response from above. The drilling continued. By 2 a.m., they had penetrated halfway through the foundation. Roughly 18 inches of solid concrete. By 4 a.m., the drill bit punched through into open air. They were inside. The engineer widened the opening using chisels and hammers. Concrete fell away chunk by chunk until the hole measured about 28 inches across. Large enough for a person to squeeze through. One man pulled himself up through the floor. He stood inside the Central Bank of Brazil. His flashlight swept across the vault. Concrete walls, metal shelving units, and stacked on those shelves, container after container filled with bundled cash. More money than he had ever seen in his entire life. The crew had specifically targeted this vault because it held used 50 real notes collected from local banks. These bills were awaiting inspection before being destroyed or returned to circulation. Used currency meant serial numbers already recorded and processed. Bills that could be spent without raising immediate red flags. The plan worked perfectly. Every door bypassed, every camera avoided, every motion sensor useless. They had simply come up through the ground nobody thought to protect. But a timing problem emerged. Saturday morning was approaching. The bank would open in hours. Security guards everywhere during the day. The crew retreated through the tunnel, returning to the house to rest. Saturday evening would bring another opportunity. The bank would close for the entire weekend. Saturday night, 10 p.m. The crew entered the tunnel in waves, 5 men at a time. Empty duffel bags, flashlights, water bottles, and the knowledge that millions of dollars waited just 250 feet away. The first team reached the vault and climbed through the floor opening. The sight defied imagination. Shelves stacked with bundled cash, container after container of 50 real notes. Loading began immediately. The system worked like a human conveyor belt. One man in the vault filling bags, another in the basement receiving them. 6 men in the tunnel passing bags along, hand over hand, for 250 feet. More men in the house loading the van. Each duffel bag held roughly 500,000 reais. Each bag weighed about 25 pounds. Fill one, pass it along, fill another. By midnight, 50 bags removed. Roughly $10 million. By 2 a.m., 100 bags, 20 million. The work was exhausting. Heavy bags, cramped tunnel, suffocating heat. Some workers started struggling. One man suffered a panic attack. The walls felt like they were closing in. He hyperventilated, dropped his bag, and scrambled backward toward the exit. In his frenzy, he bumped a support beam. Dirt fell from above. For one terrifying moment, everyone froze. The tunnel held. The panicked man reached the house and refused to return. But 24 other crew members kept working. By 6 a.m. Sunday morning, 300 bags extracted. $60 million. The vault was half empty. Sunlight was approaching. Neighbors would soon notice the van making frequent trips. The crew paused operations during daylight hours, resting in the house surrounded by stacks of cash on beds, floors, and closets. When darkness returned Sunday evening, work resumed. By midnight, another 50 bags. By 2 a.m., another 50. Entire shelving units emptied, bills of all denominations, even some foreign currency. By 4 a.m. Monday morning, the final bags came out. Total haul, 164.8 million Brazilian reais, roughly 70 million US dollars. Approximately 3.5 tons of cash. The crew stood in the emptied vault, stunned. Someone suggested leaving a note. A calling card. Ribeiro shut that idea down immediately. Less evidence, the better. They climbed back through the floor, crawled through the tunnel one last time, and emerged as dawn approached. Ribeiro looked at his exhausted crew. Dirt-covered, sleep-deprived, suddenly wealthy beyond imagination. He told them to go home, clean up, act normal, avoid sudden purchases. The crew dispersed in small groups, taking different routes. 256 feet away, the Central Bank of Brazil sat quiet, undisturbed. Nobody had any idea what had just happened beneath their feet. August 8th, 2005. Monday, 8 a.m. Bank employees arrived for a normal workday. Security guards unlocked doors. Managers began their morning routines. At approximately 9 a.m., a bank official went to access the vault for a routine inventory check. He stepped inside and stopped cold. The shelves were empty. Containers that should have held millions were gone. The entire vault had been cleaned out. Then he noticed something on the floor. A circular hole, roughly 28 inches across, cut cleanly through the reinforced concrete. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed to the scene. Emergency calls went out. Federal police arrived within hours. Investigators descended through the hole and found themselves in a narrow tunnel stretching away into darkness. They crawled through 250 feet of reinforced passage, wooden supports, electric lights, ventilation pipes, until they emerged in a house on Rua 25 de Março. The property was abandoned. Left behind were some gardening tools, artificial grass samples, and a painted sign for a landscaping company that had been entirely fictional. Police questioned neighbors. Did anyone see anything unusual? Residents described the landscaping crew. The white van. Men coming and going at odd hours. One neighbor mentioned they seemed to move a lot of soil. The van always left full and came back empty. That was the clue that explained everything. For 3 months, this crew had removed approximately 30 tons of earth right under everyone's noses, truckload by truckload, while pretending to run a grass company. The sophistication stunned investigators. This was a feat of criminal engineering. The tunnel rivaled professional mining operations. Every detail had been considered, from ventilation to lighting to structural integrity. And the thieves had left almost nothing behind. Some energy drink cans, water bottles, burn ointment, a prepaid phone card that would later prove significant. The cash was simply gone. But authorities knew one truth about heists involving large crews. When 25 or more people share a secret worth $70 million, someone always makes a mistake. 3 weeks after the heist, a car dealership in Fortaleza, a man walks in looking at a brand new Honda Civic. The salesman asks how he plans to pay. The buyer pulls out a thick envelope stuffed with 100 real notes. Cash. 45,000 Rs? The salesman processes the paperwork, but something feels wrong. This customer seems nervous, sweating. The bills look crisp, sequential, like they came straight from a bank vault. After the man drives away, the salesman calls federal police. Within hours, investigators are tracking the new Civic. He leads them to 2 other men who also came into sudden, unexplained wealth. Police coordinate raids on 3 houses simultaneously. Inside, they find stacks of notes still wrapped in central bank bands. The first arrests happen fast. Initially, the suspects stay silent. But police offer deals. Reduced sentences for names. Someone breaks. By September, 8 members of the crew are in custody. But Ribeiro has vanished. So has most of the money. The prepaid phone card found in the tunnel proved valuable. Police traced it to a cell phone and began monitoring communications. An operation codenamed Facção Tupera, Operation Mole Faction, led to 43 more arrests. The investigation mushroomed. What started with 25 suspects resulted in charges against 133 individuals. Courts convicted 119 people. Sentences totaled over 2,400 years of combined prison time. Among those captured were Antonio Jusivan Alves dos Santos, known as Alemão, a primary leader, Moisés Teixeira da Silva, the intellectual architect, even a central bank security employee who had provided inside information. But despite all these arrests, authorities recovered only a fraction of the stolen funds. Around 20 million reais in cash, plus another 12.5 million through seized assets. That left more than 100 million reais, over $40 million, still missing. Some was spent quickly on luxury cars. Other portions were laundered through legitimate businesses, and the rest, reportedly, remains hidden to this day. Here is where the story takes its darkest turn. The stolen millions painted targets on every crew member's back. Criminal organizations across Brazil knew exactly who had suddenly become rich, and they wanted their share. In the months following the heist, at least 6 kidnappings were directly linked to the robbery. In each case, family members paid substantial ransoms hoping to recover their loved ones. Luis Fernando Ribeiro, the man many considered the mastermind, fled Fortaleza after the theft and settled in São Paulo. But his new wealth made him a mark. On October 7, 2005, Ribeiro was abducted outside a nightclub in a São Paulo suburb. His family scrambled to gather ransom money. They paid through his lawyer, Reports suggest over 890,000 reais. The payment went through, but Ribeiro was never released. On October 20th, his body was discovered on an isolated road near Camandacaya, a small town about 200 miles west of Rio de Janeiro. He had been shot 7 times. Marks on his wrists showed he had been handcuffed. He was only 26 years old. A police corporal in Minas Gerais, speaking anonymously out of fear for his own safety, confirmed what everyone suspected. The killing was definitely connected to the robbery. Disturbing evidence emerged suggesting police officers themselves may have been involved in the kidnapping and murder. 3 officers were eventually arrested. A document signed by 4 state prosecutors noted clear signs of law enforcement participation in the crime. The money that was supposed to buy freedom had instead purchased death. Other crew members met similar fates. Bodies appeared. Suspects vanished. The cursed cash seemed to destroy everyone who touched it. Even those who avoided kidnapping faced constant danger, living in fear, looking over their shoulders, knowing that anyone who discovered their connection to the heist might come for them next. Some fled Brazil entirely. Others went into hiding. A few turned themselves in, preferring the certainty of prison to the randomness of violence on the streets. 20 years later, the Banco Central heist remains legendary. Netflix produced a documentary series in 2022. A Brazilian film dramatized the events in 2011. The case transformed security protocols at Brazilian financial institutions. Banks reinforced vault floors. Underground sensors were installed. But questions linger. Of the original crew, many remain unidentified. Perhaps a dozen people who helped dig that tunnel simply melted back into ordinary lives. More than half the stolen money was never recovered. Somewhere in Brazil, possibly buried, possibly invested in legitimate businesses, tens of millions of dollars remain hidden. The heist stands as a testament to meticulous planning and audacious ambition. For 3 months, these men worked in secret, moving tons of earth bucket by bucket, building an underground passage that connected an innocent-looking house to one of Brazil's most secure vaults. They thought of everything: the cover story, the ventilation, the timing, the target currency. What they failed to anticipate was the aftermath, the enemies that money creates. The simple truth that in a crew of 25 people, keeping a secret worth $70 million is nearly impossible. The planning was brilliant. The execution was flawless. The escape was clean. But the ending? Prison for some, graves for others. And for the rest, a lifetime of looking over their shoulders, knowing that the fortune they stole might one day cost them everything. The Central Bank of Brazil heist reminds us that pulling off the impossible is only half the challenge. Getting away with it, truly getting away with it, that is the part almost nobody manages.